Let's talk nutrition, friends. I love fitness, exercise, movement, working out, whatever you want to call it. However, I'm sure you have seen, read, or heard the idea of around health, especially talking about maybe weight and weight management, that it's 80-20, 80% nutrition or what you eat, and 20% exercise. I will say, I just want to share that, now granted this was over 10 years ago, so I was a bit younger and I was already at a pretty healthy weight when I was training for long distance triathlons and for my Ironman. That involved hours and hours of training. I mean, some weekends we were talking putting in 5 and 6 hours in a day. I got away with a lot of poor nutrition. Mark and I were starting to date when we were training for Ironman Wisconsin. And we would train for hours and hours and then end up sharing a large pizza, going and getting ice cream. So again, I got away with a lot. And frankly, I wonder how much better maybe my performance could have been if I was fueling my body a bit better. Now, it was not like that every day. However, I just think it's interesting. Now, the converse of that is I stopped doing long distance triathlons. However, my eating did not quite stop. And thus the weight came on a bit by a bit. And now I have learned focus much more on my nutrition because it's huge, 80%. I will say that I'm not going to advocate for any one type of diet. As far as, there's paleo, Whole30, vegan, vegetarian, Lord knows what else, keto. I mean, there's so much out there. I really do believe that there is not one specific diet for everybody. And I also think that there's probably not one specific diet for one person for their whole life. Unfortunately, I think that means doing some experimenting on ourselves to see what works and what doesn't work for us. Now, the contrast of that is, I don't think anyone can argue that focusing on whole foods is a bad thing. Meaning focusing on things that are not processed, things that usually are in the perimeter of the grocery store, things like fruits and veggies, whole foods, things that don't have a lot of ingredients. Focusing on those things first is always going to be a good idea. The next thing that I will say that I feel I've learned, especially whether you're training or not for a specific athletic event, are focusing on protein. You may have heard of macros. People talk about the macro diet. I feel like that became huge with CrossFit. But there are 3 macros. Macros is short for macronutrients. So that's protein, carbs, and fat. And what I have learned in my own journey in the last year and a half-ish is protein. Focusing on protein is also a good idea. And that, frankly, we need carbs. Now, I know there's probably a lot of people out there big on keto, and keto has worked for them. And I say, you keep doing you. But for most of us, we need carbs. And yes, I mentioned earlier ice cream. I used to get away with eating it on the daily. Now I hardly have it. But eating, I say good carbs, and really I need to change my wording on that, because the other thing I've been working on is food is food. It's not good, it's not bad. Food is food. And changing our framework around that is huge. Obviously, from this little 5-minute discussion already, you can tell there is a lot to discuss and unpack around nutrition. I think for this video, the main takeaway is there's no one right or perfect diet. Figuring out what works for you, focusing on whole foods, focusing on good protein sources. Starting there, and then we'll continue this conversation, of course, because there is a lot to talk about. Oh, and along with the fact of food is food. It is not good, it is not bad. It's just food, how we fuel our bodies. All right, to be continued.